The percentage of adults who never want to be parents has doubled in just 10 years. There's something really unsettling about the whole child-free by choice trend, as a growing number of young men and women swear off ever having kids. It's a free country, Sami. Just leave them be. Listen, I can't. It's not in my blood. Also, moreover, the ideology that drives the child-free by choice movement is called radical individualism, which is bad for the individual and very bad for our society. So I think it's worth being pretty concerned about and speaking up about. Welcome back to Human Matters, where we talk about everything that matters to humans. Please like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Today, we are diving into the depressing cave of the child-free by choice content online, because that's really where this movement is gaining traction. People are loud and proud about deciding that they are totally against ever having children. They're even throwing parties to celebrate it.
Tomorrow, I'm getting permanently sterilized by having my fallopian tubes removed, so I decided to throw a little celebration for that and to celebrate the fact I've made the choice to not have kids. Women tend to only be celebrated when they get engaged, get married, or have a baby,
because those are things worth celebrating. Okay, anyways.
and it's rare to see them celebrated as individuals for their accomplishments outside of the family. So it was really important to me to make sure that I dedicated time and space to celebrate myself and this life-changing decision that I'm making, and I'm so excited about it.
The solo celebration with you and your phone might be really fun when you're 20. Decades down the line, when you've thrown yourself a bunch of parties and have way too much leftover cake, that will likely not be the case. It will likely not be all that enjoyable anymore. You might not be smiling on your picnic blanket by yourself. You might be thinking, wow, that was a huge mistake. When I first became a mom, I took my little baby boy out on a coffee date, which just meant that I drank coffee while he stared at me, and it was really fun. This elderly woman came and she sat next to me. We started talking, and as we talked, she looked at me and my son with such a deep longing in her eyes. If you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. We talked for a bit, and I ended up asking her if she has any kids, and she told me, no, I was too busy having fun. And she didn't say that with a smile. She ended up sharing that her husband had died years ago. She had no family left around her. It was just her and her dog on a couple 100 acres of property. And I remember leaving that coffee shop just thinking how no granddaughters come to hear her stories, no grandsons come to explore her massive backyard, no children call her to hear about her day and invest in her life. It was just overall a really depressing conversation, and not just for me. Like, I could tell for her this conversation was hard. I don't wish that on this girl who's throwing herself a little solo celebration, but truly I fear that is the reality of her life decades down the line. Okay, I'm scared to do this, but I know that Reddit is just full of stories from people who do not want or like children, so I fear that we must go there to learn about the child-free by choice movement, and I'm taking you with me. There's a whole thread for child-free people. How many people are on this thread? Is there a way to tell? I'm not on Reddit often. Wow. 285,000 weekly visitors. 13,000 people weekly contributing to it. Oh my, that's terrifying. All right, let's look. I will not babysit your kids or anyone else's. This sounds fun. I hate when I tell people about my decision to be child-free and they say, but you'll babysit my kids, right? No, I'm the child-free woman who genuinely does not want to be around kids for more than maybe an hour or so. I refuse to be around them unsupervised because kids notoriously try to win every Darwin award they can. What does that mean? Evolutionary Is she pointing to Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection in how she's talking about children? I think so. That's terrifying. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to relate to them. Relate? Yeah. I don't know how to comfort them if they're crying. I don't want to have to be stern with them. I used to think I would eventually grow into liking kids or becoming more maternal, but I'm not at all. I usually try to avoid kids whenever I can, and it's not the kind of person you want to be alone with your kids. Yeah, so if you don't ever spend any time with kids, you will never end up liking them more. That seems obvious to me, but maybe not. No one else's kids are the exception to this. Am I being dramatic, or does this annoy other child-free people? Let's see. Does it annoy other child-free people? I'm sure it does. Child-free people do not want to be asked to babysit your kids. This reply is really, really crazy, dude. 55 upvotes. That's too many upvotes. I made it very clear early on to my brother and sister-in-law that I'm never available for babysitting, ever. I don't care if it's an emergency, aka restaurant booking or Pokemon Go raid. Find someone else to watch your kids. Children annoy the absolute heck out of me with their gross germy coughs, sticky fingers, constant screaming. I simply freeze up whenever my brother's toddler falls over or the baby starts randomly crying. I literally have zero maternal instincts. Fortunately, my brother and his family moved to the other side of the country a few years ago, so I'm never expected to babysit, which is a huge relief. You sound like a super great aunt. To put it very plain, these people just sound really grumpy. Okay, next. I overestimated how many of my friends would actually stay child-free. I'm a 35 male, got a vasectomy over 10 years ago when he was 25. That's so early. And now he's saying, everyone has kids now, dude. Everyone. I'm not lonely, but my life is much quieter lately. It's so strange. That's the beginning of loneliness, unfortunately. Most recent relationships ended after 2 years because she wanted kids. I love my cat. Thankful for my 2 always child-free friends. People aren't lying when they talk about how folks turn into different people after having kids. Not bad necessarily, but dude, I genuinely do not like children in any capacity, and that's all they talk about. They worship them. Your friends don't worship their kids. It just looks like worship in relation to how much you hate their kids. Also, the reason that your friends with children now don't want to be your friends is because their entire lives revolve around people you hate a lot. Of course they don't want to be around you. You hate the thing they love the most. Next, can't even go to the bar without someone bringing a baby. I was at the bar the other day, just needed to distract myself after putting my dog to sleep. I pulled up and there was a family with a young child and a baby. And then after they left, another couple came in with a baby. Granted, this place offers food and drinks other than alcohol, but it's still pretty dive bar-esque. Okay, so it's not a bar. Let's be a little bit more clear and honest. It sounds more like a brewery, which is typically pretty family friendly, actually. I like breweries, and I'm ruining a bunch of child-free by choice people's lives, apparently. I get it. I'm not entitled to a child-free world or whatever. Do you get it? But bars are literally the only place made for adults where we can be ourselves. Oh my gosh. I can't. Okay, last one. It happened to me. My partner of 2 years admitted that he was lying to me our whole relationship about not wanting kids. That is not something you should lie about, to be fair. That our relationship is and was enough family for him, but apparently the thought was eating at him that he might not see a little version of his intergenerational trauma take its first steps or teach it something new. The fact that she is calling this baby and it kind of says everything you need to know. It hurts that he's gone and I miss him. Saying that, there is no world or universe that I give up my boundaries and my body for anyone. That right there is the line that exposes the ideology that is driving this movement. It's called radical individualism, and a few people with this ideology is like nothing to fear. Millions of people who hold this ideology will create a devastatingly lonely, fragile, and dying society, quite literally dying society. And I'm not being dramatic. It's already happening, and I want to help you identify it. Radical individualism is the belief that the individual person's feelings and self-preservation matter more than any group, including one's community and one's family. This worldview places your personal comfort as morally supreme. So, if anything threatens your personal comfort, it is an actual injustice against you. To boil it down, discomfort is something that you have a right not to experience at any cost. In theory, this ideology sounds alarming. In practice, it's actually worse. It's really bad. The most extreme example of this ideology played out is abortion. If your preborn child causes you emotional, mental, or physical discomfort, you have a right to escape that discomfort, even if it comes at the cost of your child's life. As another example, somebody with this worldview might have a friend who speaks a difficult truth to them about maybe a bad choice that they made or a character flaw that they could work on. And in a healthier moral framework, that kind of correction would be, yes, painful, as is any correction, but it would be seen as valuable. Radical individualism trains you to interpret that discomfort as a kind of emotional harm that violates your right to psychological safety. So cutting them off becomes entirely justified because they are oppressive to your right to comfort. Or maybe you're at a restaurant and a baby at the next table starts crying. For most of human history, that would have just been seen as part of living in a society with other families existing around you. But radical individualism totally reframes it. The child is not just a fellow community member to help oversee anymore. They are an intrusion into your dining experience. This actually just reminds me of the videos that you see of people in Japan loving on babies so well. If you haven't seen them, we must take a moment to watch them. They're so cute. POV, you take your baby to Japan. So cute. Oh. They're just interested. Like, they engage with the baby. They'll touch the baby's cheeks. They'll hold the baby for a picture. Like, it's special. Babies are seen as special. Why can't we have that, dude? I want that so bad. To be fair, like I do meet a lot of grandmas out in America who want to like love on my baby, but this is a different level of people loving babies. Okay, here's another one. POV, you're a foreign baby in Japan. Everybody is looking at the baby, dude. Oh my gosh, they're all waving. Her caption says, "It's very common here in Japan for people to interact, touch, hold our baby. I love seeing their reactions to her every time we go out." Japan is really collectivist. They are not radical individualists. They believe that the individual has a very real obligation to their community, including children. To bring this back to the child-free discussion, of course, under radical individualism, children are seen as a genuinely ridiculous decision because suddenly you have a biological tie and a legal responsibility to place your child above your own comfort a lot of the time, pretty much every day, for at least 18 years of your own life. So children under this ideology are the ultimate attack against your rights and your autonomy. There's really no wondering why our birth rate is declining. It's because of a lot of different things, yes, but radical individualism is certainly a major factor at play here. And instead of having kids, adults are replacing that very good and real desire in their hearts to raise and nurture a lineage of beautiful little children to hug and squeeze and kiss their whole lives. They're replacing that with dogs. And at least in the Pacific Northwest, it's like easier to find a dog-friendly restaurant than it is to find a kid-friendly one. I actually wanted to make a whole video on that topic, but my husband told me that I should avoid the dog people because I'm metaphorically going to shoot this brand new channel in the foot. Maybe someday when I'm really brave, I'll talk about the dog culture, but that is, it's not today. It's not today, okay? I do want to end this video by clarifying a couple of things. I think that radical individualists and the child-free by choice people who subscribe to that really depressing ideology can still make good friends. They can still be present family members because sacrifice is still seen as something that you can choose to do for others. It's not like it's something that you like truly are not allowed to do. And I think people still recognize some degree of virtue in sacrifice, even if they are radical individualists. And of course, most importantly, since we are all created by the same very good creator, there is a part of our hearts that desires to do good and to love well, to sacrifice for others, to care for the community. The key difference is just that sacrifice is not seen as something you ought to do. And a culture full of people who live that way and believe that way is ultimately a really lonely culture that does not welcome children. Love, by its nature, requires sacrifice. It requires us to see our family, our friends, our elderly and disabled neighbors as people we are obligated to love and care for, to sacrifice our time and our money and our efforts and our energy for. That is how you build a welcoming culture. Additionally, you can still live a beautiful life full of meaning and purpose if you never have children of your own, as long as you are living a sacrificially loving life, as long as you are still involved in the lives of children, especially. I know a lot of people without kids who recognize their responsibility to the children in their community and to the kids in their families. They are good and intentional adults who prioritize and look out for and care for the kids around them. So this is not a video about you if that's you. And thank you if you are that great and so present aunt or uncle, if you're that selfless friend who's always there to babysit at any given hour, if you're that stranger who is intentionally looking out for the families and for the young kids around you and looking for ways to sacrifice for them to better their lives, thank you. The point here is that having nobody to whom you have a genuine lifelong obligation is going to leave you lonely and honestly grumpy, like all the people on this Reddit thread. And enough people like that will leave our culture isolated and neglected. We need to advocate for a culture that welcomes children, that welcomes the inconvenient. We need a culture that rightly understands that love includes deep, real sacrifice for others. Thank you for joining me today.